Hello everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. We're going to be starting the stream and the breakdown of the Haladin faction, tactics that we can use, what all of the units do specifically, down to the nitty-gritty details. So expect this battle to take quite some time, as I will be stopping things, responding to questions, pointing out salient moments in the battle as I am able. As I actually played in this one, I have a pretty good idea of what went down, and certainly what my strategy was going into it. But you'll just want to give me a couple of minutes here while I get the stream linked in the various places, and then we can begin. I'm sure everyone is very excited to see what the Haliden can do, and I am extremely proud to show them off to you. So just give me a couple of minutes here, and we'll get this started. Hello Heckle Smosh, nice to see you here. I don't know if we've met before, but welcome to the channel if this is your first time. Hey Calvin, I hope your holidays have been going well. Welcome Rex. Rex is one of our testers, so he's been here a few times before. Alright, we're almost done here. You talked with me on the Gondolin livestream. Fair enough, that was a few weeks back, so I probably just forgot. But welcome back in any case. Yeah, it's been quite some time. I've been very busy with school and with mod development. We actually have a tournament going on, and of course Christmas, so I've been plenty busy. But I think that's good to go. We should have a few people coming in. Why haven't I uploaded in 2 months? Well, I pretty well just explained that. Super busy with real life. I have final exams that I had to get through, and of course there was development that was ongoing. Trying to get Gondolin finished, the Haladin finished, and everything onto the build. Not 100% done yet. There is a missing Haladin unit. There'll be another chariot, and there is another unit yet to come for Gondolin, but you guys will find all about that later on a subsequent stream. But in any case, let's take a look at the Haladin faction here, and I can tell you a little bit about my strategy and what the Haladin do. In brief, think of them as the polar opposite of Ossiriand. They are Ossiriand if Ossiriand was more concerned with stabbing you in the eye than they were with shooting you from a distance from the tree line. The Haliden have a lot of hidden units. You can see a lot of them here. Some of the Rigswear and some of the lower end units especially have the hide trait, but also some of their higher end cavalry, and I'll be bringing all of their mobility in this game today. So mobility and forward momentum and up close aggression is the name of the game when it comes to the Haliden. They also have some fairly interesting, I dare say unique units mechanically, as no other units currently work as they do. So without any further ado, let's get into my army comp here. I'm going to be bringing a core of light infantry. A lot of them are going to be hidden. That is going to take the form of 3 units of Rigswear of Brethil. These names are of course subject to change. These are all things we've had suggested to us by the testers. I just opened the floor and people gave me their names. And yeah, that's kind of what we're going with for now. But the Rigswear, or the fierce or brave men of Brethil, are a locked morale tar pit unit. They are unshielded light infantry. They can hide anywhere. They do have a projectile that they throw at about 60 or I think 70 meters, but it does not have armor piercing. These are not dedicated skirmishers, and therefore really they're just throwing pointy sticks at you. That being said, it is an 8 damage projectile, so against medium or unshielded units or light infantry, it can actually be fairly devastating. And you'll see that in a few subsequent replays as they come out throughout the week. But I've got 3 of them. They're going to be forming the core of an ambush that I'll be launching against our opponents. I've also got 3 units of Freiswehr of Brethil. This is another lower end archer. Spearmen for the Haladin have some pretty big bonuses when fighting in the woods. They get about +4. And in addition, they also enjoy higher than average melee defense bonuses from spears, which are already fairly high on the MD side of things. So you're going to see fairly decent performance from these guys in melee. They are still skirmishers, so they don't have infantry stats, but they do enjoy light infantry bonuses, which is fairly unique among skirmishers of their type. So they're going to have about 9 or so melee defense. They hold the line well enough, and they're also fantastic for supporting Haliden mobility out in the field. Behind them, you're going to find 3 units of the Warda of Brethil. These are lower end spears. One of the big things they have going for them is high morale values, which is something you could say for the Haliden generally. But these guys especially have really good morale for their tier, and they also have armor-piercing spears. Not a lot of damage, it's only about 2 or so damage and 1 charge value on top of that. But it does still add up, especially against lower-end chaff units, Angband legionaries, that sort of thing. You can expect the Warda to perform reasonably well and to hold the line for an extended period. So, 3 Warda, 3 Rigswehr, 3 Freiswehr, and then I've also got 3 Ulfadin of Ethelbrandir, and this is one of the aforementioned special units. The Ulfadin are a Berserker type unit. That's really nothing new at this point. But they do have a sort of trinity of mechanics that lend themselves to being kind of interesting in how you can use them. So the Ulfadin have about 3 times the mass of all other units. Most units clock in at about 1 mass. The Ulfadin, of course, have 3. They are also relentless, so they cannot be stunned when taking incoming damage. If you play a lot of Medieval 2 and you really zoom in on the battles, you'll notice that units will block and it will interrupt attack animations. That is not the case for the Ulfadin. And in addition to that, they are also multiple HP. Each one of these Ulfadin weighing in at about 120 men per unit, and they all have 2 hit points. And the end result of this is some fairly interesting behavior and applications on the battlefield. Now, your mileage is going to vary depending on the skill and quality of the units that you throw them at, but against halberds, against a lot of 2-handed spears and things like that, you can expect the Ulfadin to charge into the front of them and actually do very well, which sort of flips the traditional uses for infantry and the dynamic between them and polearm units on its head, really. Normally, if you're throwing infantry into the front of polearms, you're expecting to lose them, and you're trying to fight some sort of holding or pinning action in order to allow yourself to win the fight elsewhere. The Ulfadin, especially against Angband units, because they're so reliant on their armor, as the Ulfadin are AP, they don't even care. They'll just push right in there. They can't get pushed back and kept at a distance the way that other units that aren't relentless do. So the Ulfadin with that mass, they just muscle in, side through things with AP, and that you can actually expect them to nearly destroy an Angband halberd line from the front. Now, Angband, of course, has plenty of ways to deal with these guys. They have next to no armor. They're very, very squishy, lower on their melee defense. There's plenty of ways you can deal with them from range. Thralls are obviously a really nice unit that Angband can bring for very cheap. That can do great against the Ulfadin. But if a full Berserker lineup crashes into your front line of mid-tiers as Angband, it is going to be a bloodbath. They're going to turn that field into a charnel house. So really cool unit, really excited to show them off today. Next we have the Skaldmare of Haleth, and this is the legendary company for the Haliden faction. And for those of you who are new, as I'm expecting quite a lot of new people in the stream today, the legendary company system is fairly analogous to the regiments of renown in Warhammer. That being said, a lot of careful attention has been given to making sure that every legendary company is unique and is, most importantly, not a replacement for other units on the roster. These are not just bodyguard tier units, one and all. There are mid-tier legendary companies, there are higher-end legend companies, and eventually we'll even have some sort of lower-end legendary companies, but they all offer some sort of utility and some sort of choice that isn't really available elsewhere in the faction's roster. So the Skaldmare, therefore, are a female version of the Berserkers, but they are lacking some of the key things that make the Berserkers sort of unique and give them their identity. Skaldmare do have multiple HP. They are also AP, but they do not have Relentless. They do not have the high mass of the Berserkers, and they have less numbers as well, and they're way more expensive. So you can't really use them in the same way. That being said, they do have a few things going for them. Obviously, armor is one of those. Shields are another thing. They've got about 6 shield value, 6 armor, so they clock in as medium infantry. And the most important piece of the puzzle for the Skaldmare of Haleth is that they have the Throne trait. Now, if anybody out there is at all familiar with the setting of the Silmarillion, you know there are a lot of big, scary-ass monsters that factions like Angband and Tolin Gaurhoth can throw your way. The Throne trait is essentially a hard counter to those elephant units. It gives units that have it a massive boost in their missile damage to elephant units, so they can kill them very quickly, very efficiently, and that's going to be really important on the field today, as we are going to be facing off against Angband, who are the king of monster factions, but Tolin Gaurhoth is also on the field today, and if they bring Sauron, the Skaldmare are a really important way for the Haladin to shut him down, because they don't have pikes, they don't have halberds, they don't have actually any two-handed units, which are all of the traditional soft counters to elephants. So they have this, they have a hard counter, they're the only faction that has it, and they can kind of live or die by how they use that legendary company. Next up, we have some of the high-tier units. So, the Waltrider Dragoons and all cavalry and mounted units generally for the Haladin are where their high-tier units reside, outside of course, the Skaldmare of Haleth, who are a high-tier unit, and the Bodyguard tier unit, which you won't see in the battle today. But most of their high-end forces are mounted, and the Waltrider Dragoons are a nice little hybrid unit. They can hide anywhere, so you can do a lot of sneaky ambushes with them. They have a ranged attack of about 6 damage, with I think 5 or 6 missiles that each model can fire. Not a lot, and mounted horsemen fire at a much greater rate than footbowmen. That being said, their main purpose is ambushing and also being melee cavalry. They have a massive boost to their base damage, which gives them solid attack values, and they also can upgrade their attack, like other Axe Haladin units, such as the Ulfadin, for a cheaper cost than the rest of the roster. So you can very easily and cost efficiently boost that attack even further. That being said, true to the Haladin, they don't have a ton of armor or melee defense. So when you're fighting against really hard targets, like the Roqueni Magloro, for example, their axes will simply bounce off of them. But against medium and light cavalry, and especially lancers or mounted horse archers, the Waltrider Dragoons are an essential part of the Haladin roster. I've also brought 2 units of the other high-tier cavalry. These guys are a little bit different. So, the Mardrot of Malduin. They are technically medium cavalry. They have better armor than the Waltriders, I think by about 2. It's like 5 on the Waltriders. These guys have about 7. They've also got a shield value of 6, so they stand up to range damage far better than the Waltriders do. And they are also spear cavalry with a clutch of javelins. These units are extremely useful for gooning out high-tier cavalry, like the Roqueni Magloro, for example, who the Waltriders would not really be able to touch, or the Thrangshik Warlords. But being spear cavalry as well, they do have a nice little niche that comes in the form of fighting elephants quite effectively. So if you can goon out a unit like Sauron, surround him with your Mardrot, they're going to poke and prod at him, and they're going to do some really cost-efficient damage, and they trade pretty nicely with those really expensive elephants. So fairly versatile. One of the other things they have going for them is a reasonably high charge bonus. I think it's been boosted by about 300% of what it would normally be, which sounds massive, but spears have really low base damage. So they've got about 5 base damage and then 10 charge. Not armor piercing, however. They're not a replacement for your lancers. They can't do everything. So you gotta be careful with what you charge them into. Go for rear charges, that sort of thing. Flanking charges to try and get around the melee defense score of the targets you wish to destroy. And that's almost everything, with the exception. Now, this unit's still a work in progress, so its chariot doesn't have its proper textures, but I wanted to get it in game, and I didn't care too much about it because this is still in our test build. So we have the Waltschreider Wainriders. There are going to be 2 different chariot units for the Haladin faction. The Wainriders cost about 1,100. You can bring 2 of them, but I think just bringing 1 for the time being is the most cost-efficient route. But each of the Haladin chariots do specialize in something different. So the Walsh Rider, Wayne Riders in particular, are really good close range fire support for your Warda of Brethil or your Fryswear and other such units. But they're also pretty good against cavalry, and being an elephant unit, they have an AoE attack. So if you can like get into blobs of cavalry or like charge through them, you're going to do a lot of damage very, very quickly. And the same goes for light infantry or like really spaced out infantry units in light formation, or loose formation rather. You can get a lot of value off of the Walsh Rider Wayne Riders, especially when you pair them with Walsh Rider Dragoons or the Mardrot Spear Cavalry. So it's a unit that does take a little bit of babysitting, but if you use it well and you get the right engagements, then it can do a crap ton of damage. You're going to see the Walsh Rider Wayne Riders really be the star of this particular battle, along with the Haladin cavalry units. What I think that's going to do for my army composition here. Let's go ahead and quickly go over that of my allies, and then we'll move on to the other side. So, one of my allies is Mevin. He's going to be playing as the Easterling faction, and it's always fun to play with Mevin. He has some pretty creative builds. Now, for the new people out there, the basic thing you need to know about the Easterlings is that they are split between two sub-factions. Those of the loyal Easterlings belonging to the tribe of Boar, and the evil, nasty, mustache-twirling villains of the tribe of Ulfang. And that's what you're going to see right here. This is the premier Ulfang unit. The Ulfang units tend to use Falxes, so they are beastly off the charge. Falxes do an incredible amount of damage off the charge, but they're not really great in sustained melee. The Easterling Ulfang faction lacks spearmen entirely, so all of their Falxes have a minor bonus against cavalry, in addition to the bonuses that they enjoy against elephant units. All two-handed units like this in Silmarillion Total War do have small bonuses against elephants, just to act as a sort of soft counter. He's also brought, I believe, 2 to 3 companies of the Marauders of Himring. There's a lot of hidden terrain here in the center, so there's going to be a ton of ambushing going down. But the Marauders are a Loch Morale tar pit. Not a lot of armor, as most of the Ulfang units tend to eschew armor in favor of mobility and damage. But super useful for just blobbing up your enemy front line, and yeah, just holding them in place for as long as you can. Also got some Eastron Marauders here. These are light throwing axes. They're basically naked, but the throwing axes that they have can do a fairly decent amount of damage, especially when you have clouds of them like this. They've got about 4 ammunition and about 8 or so damage, so if you're throwing against medium infantry or flanking heavy infantry, these throwing axes can be absolutely devastating, and I think they've been brought in force here to sort of be used en masse against the Angband front lines, which tend to be pretty stacked and pretty meaty. We'll go into that in just a moment. He's also got a ton of the mobile cavalry. One of the weird sort of challenges of playing as the Easterlings is that they don't have foot archers. They do, however, have some very specialized and, in some cases, cost-effective horsemen. Are going to see 3 of the Eastron horsemen on the field today. They're light horse archers with high tier damage values. That being said, super fragile. If you get these anywhere near a halfway competent cavalry unit, they will get torn asunder. The same, however, cannot be said for the Salamandrine Guard. These guys are the monster hunters of the Easterling faction. They have armor piercing with their Kopeshes in close quarters, pretty decent charge values. They're one of the few Easterling units that can actually upgrade their armor, the other one being a bodyguard tier unit. And they also have a special projectile type that attacks morale directly. That being said, they have about half the ammunition of other units of their type and tier, so you do need to use it wisely. But after the fact, they're solid melee cavalry. They are still armor piercing, so it's something to definitely be afraid of. I've already looked at the Sons of Ulfang. They're sort of a premier Falx unit. We've got some Warband of Lothlan, one of the Boar, the good aligned Easterling subfaction units. They're going to be hanging out here with the Ballista, which is also crewed by some spearmen as well. Ballista, really important artillery piece for sometimes goading out monsters from a large distance, or for taking out enemy artillery pieces. That being said, its firing arc can be a little bit weird, so currently it's best to try and elevate it, get it onto positions like this, and then fire from the higher elevation to a lower elevation, so that the bullet drop doesn't cause your projectiles to impact the ground before they hit anything. Next, and finally for this team, we have the Elves of Ossiriand, being played by DF Demon Hunter. This is actually his first time using the Green Elves, but he does fantastically. The Green Elves, the current joke on the Discord is that the Green Elves are basically the Viet Cong. They have a ton of hide everywhere units. They fight predominantly from range with a ton of light infantry and lots of ambush cavalry. They've got some solid lancers that are also monster hunters, and they've got a bunch of horse archers that you're going to see in this game as well. That being said, we have the current legendary company for the Elves of Ossiriand, the Kinsmen of Denethor. These are a medium spearmen, locked morale, really good for holding the line, and that's something you can say about most of the Ossiriand units. There's not a ton of offensive potential here, but they're... Ooh, we're going to go ahead and slow that down just a little bit. We're turning down to 1 here. I think we've got some catapults from the Finarfin side of things. But zinging over the head of this unit, this is the Spear Host of Gelion. They are two-handed spearmen. They are one of the, in fact, the only unit that fights in a formation for Ossiriand, and they're a pretty nice fallback thing. Sort of a last line of defense and a potential answer to some of the polearm units in the game, which the Elves of Ossiriand kind of need. Got some Hunters of Rathloriel here as well. These are hybrid spear/armor-piercing javelin men. Behind them, we've got the Skirmishers of Rathloriel. These are infantry that have a little bit of ammunition, about 6 or so ammo, so they can be used to help soften off enemy lines before they charge into the fray. Over here, got some Spear Hosts of Rathloriel. They're basically hunters, but without the javelins. More skirmishers, and then we have a bodyguard tier unit here. These are the Mythern and Tol Galen, one of the only heavy infantry units that the Elves of Ossiriand can bring, the other one being the Urfin. These guys are by far the most well-armored, but they are extremely tiny and very, very expensive. They're more expensive than other heavy infantry and units of their tier, and that's just because they're sort of an off-specialization thing for the Elves of Ossiriand, who are predominantly light with the occasional medium infantry mixed in. More skirmishers, hunters, and all those nasty things. Got some kinsmen here. Ooh, yeah, these guys getting fricasseed by the House Finarfin catapults right across the way. And got another company here of the Kinsmen of Denethor. One of the things you're probably not seeing right now is Urfin and Tower. There's also some hidden units in here as well. The Scouts of Gelion, they are light archers, and the main line infantry archer for the Elves of Ossiriand. They are the ranged DPS workhorse, and you're going to see a lot of them in this battle today. We've got some Urfin and Tower here as well. This is a detachment, basically a half-strength unit that you pay half cost for. But the Urfin and Tower generally are high-end shock troops with a little bit of range DPS. They also have fire arrows, which are shaping up in the meta to be an important way of rushing artillery units that get left too close to the front and punishing your opponent for doing so. And that's basically going to be it for this side. So let me just leave it on slow here and see if there's any questions that we have so far. I think Gondolin needs some reskins, perhaps the shield and swords of some units. I don't know, man, they just came out. I'm pretty happy with Gondolin, but that's something we can always talk about a little bit later. Doesn't look like we're missing too many questions here. So I'm going to go back into it. Across the field from the Green Elves of Ossiriand, we have a pretty scary target for them to have to take down. The House of Finarfin is one of the more rather defensively aligned Noldor houses, and they sort of exist on a gradient, with the House of Finarfin being the most defensive. Marksmen of Nargothrond here are quite low in number, but they have fantastic armor and a split-shot missile. So each one of these marksmen, every time they fire, is going to pop off 3 separate shots. It's a serious force multiplier, and the Marksmen of Nargothrond, especially against the lightly armored Green Elves, are something you want to take extremely seriously. And you're going to see sort of a Cold War develop on this end of the battle, and then things will sort of sweep towards the Finarfin lines for the finale. Over here, Company of Prince Gwyndor, the new legendary company for the House of Finarfin. For those of you unfamiliar with the story, Prince Gwyndor was one of the Elves of Nargothrond who volunteered to serve under the House of Fingolfin at the Nir Naiath Arnothiad, the great disaster that basically destroyed Elvendom in the north of Beleriand for the rest of the First Age. It was a complete nightmare, and it was kicked off a little bit prematurely, and this contributed to their overall defeat by Prince Gwyndor. Prince Gwyndor saw his brother decapitated and mutilated in front of his section of the line where he and the rest of the host of Hithlum were hiding in the hills. And he impetuously charged forward, swept the orcs away in a glorious charge, and cut his way all the way to the gates of Angband across the Anfauglith, the Great Desolation, in front of Morgoth's fortress. He and the rest of his company were almost slain to a man, with the exception of Prince Gwyndor, who would later be released, and he would rub shoulders with none other than Turin Turambar himself. And in order to represent him faithfully, the company of Prince Gwyndor are a unit that will charge without orders. They also have a massive charge distance and a huge charge value as well. They are heavier than some of the other mid-tier units. This is one of the mid-tier legendary companies that I spoke of earlier. And they are also completely fearless. They will fight to the last man in the service of their kingdom and for their prince. A very potentially scary unit, good at chaff grinding, good at holding the line and fighting delaying actions. The company of Prince Gwyndor are a very much welcome addition to the House of Finarfin. Amar here, the Finarfin player, has also brought a couple units of the Archers of Talathirnin. These represent Nargothrond at a time when it was not inclined to sally forth to open warfare. So a lot of medium infantry in that way. All of the Talathirnin units, in fact, represent the mainstay of the Nargothrond armies at a time when they weren't going forth to open war. So these medium archers are really good, mostly for the large amount of them that you can bring, but they also have elven accuracy and damage, and that is not something that you want to overlook. In the back here, we can see a couple of catapult pieces. Catapults in Silmarillion Total War are best tuned for destroying infantry. Trebuchets are the things you want to use to bring down walls, whereas catapults don't exactly do that job to a very satisfactory level. They are, however, excellent at punishing blobs of infantry and for dealing with these sort of layered armies that you're going to see a lot of people employ. So things like this, if you're attacking, you want to hit the front line, attack the unit behind it, and you're going to get that sort of overshot, basically, that's going to drop, trying to attack these guys, it will drop into your front line. So really good use of them is to attack tiered armies like that. And with two of them, you can just put a cloud of fireballs downhill, and we've already seen a few of those careening through the air and taking a lot of elves with them. Swordsmen of Talathirnin over here. These are sort of the mainstay of the Finarfin front line. Whole bunch of them, not armor-piercing javelins, but excellent for softening up not very hard targets. The Swordsmen of Talathirnin detachment that you can see here is, however, armor-piercing, and it can do a little bit of extra damage. Front line here, and this is sort of the main thrust of the Finarfin army, it's going to consist of both Wardens of Nargothrond and the Bridge Wardens of Nargothrond. You can see the new pike animation here that we've imported from Europa Barbarorum 2. And fighting together, this is a very, very difficult phalanx to bring down. This is the killing power of the Finarfin army right here. You can see some mangonels and some early skirmish going on here. We'll move quickly through the rest of the army, as Angband is a faction we've already seen. Wretches of Angband, some low-tier spearmen here from Steward of Dale, one of our developers. He also has brought some Tormentors of the Iron Crown, and they are pretty nasty macemen, not something you want to get too close to with their high armor values. We've got some Wolf Riders here mixed in with the Troll Guard of Gothmog, the personal retinue of the Captain of Angband himself. Together, these units form a very scary anti-cavalry, anti-just about anything force that can be used with used basically far afield. Because of their mobility and because of the locked morale nature of the Trolls of Gothmog, they will always fight to the finish to give the Wolf Riders a chance to disengage, countercharge, or to escape. In behind them, we have the Uroloki, the Fire Drakes of Morgoth. Naturally not the winged version. We don't really have plans to add the winged versions to be able to do Total War because that mechanic is kind of janky. However, on foot, they attack in a large radius in front of them, and they also spit fire like a mortar. So you can use them to support the Angband front line, move and engage with the Halberds, which you're going to see a ton of in Steward's army, and it can be a very tough force indeed. His main line is going to consist of Ironshod Legionaries, Halberdiers, all kinds of mid-tier units that Angband is so well known for, and they all have their armor upgrade, which is going to give them that sort of pointed triangular helmet. Wouldn't want to take a headbutt from one of these bruisers. And together, really strong front line. We've also got some of the Bulldogs of Angband here, a solid bodyguard unit, more than capable of taking on just about any other unit out there in the game. Can also upgrade their armor. Very, very scary. For those of you unaware, the Bulldogs are essentially Maiar, the same level of spirit as Gandalf or the Balrog, but forced to inhabit the monstrous form of huge orc chieftains. They inspire units around them, they're heavy infantry, and they just truck through people. And you can see that they've actually mounted some dwarven heads on spikes that are actually riveted into their backs, causing them to be in constant pain. So they take out that fury on the hides of their enemies. Got some Thralls of Angband out here, low-tier archers, an Orc Mangonel crew from Stewart as well. The Mangonel is the thing we've been seeing firing into the distance. Potentially very, very scary. Especially against blobs, you can cause a lot of mass routes that way. More Thralls of Angband, more Wretches, and then more Wolf Riders and other scary things over here on the wing. And now we move into the final Red Team army, the Dominion of Tolin Gaurhoth, a faction that I got to make from whole cloth, which I was excited to do. Thrungsheik Wolfborn are basically a bodyguard tier Lancer / melee cavalry hybrid. There's a whole bunch of them. They're not super expensive, and you can upgrade their armor as well, so they can be very, very tanky, but mostly you want to try and keep them off the charge where that high mount mass and the high charge damage can do devastating work. Over here we have some Gijek Skada as Chosen, one of the few heavy units that the Dominion of Tolin Gaurhoth is able to put into the field. They are heavy spearmen, and they recently received an armor upgrade in this patch. Some more spearmen over here. Got some Orc Mangonel, Hishbukraz Ash Priests, a terrifying unit. So I spoke about the Bulldogs earlier, and these are another species of Bulldog. You can see that the corruption within is reflected in mutations on their flesh, causing horns to jut forward from their foreheads. They are relentless armor-piercing axemen, but they also have slings, which is potentially very, very scary. It's armor-piercing, it does damage to morale, and it has a big fiery inferno that engulfs the enemies that it hits and destroys. And that's going to be where the general rather, is hanging out today. And back here, have some Wolfguard, sort of the equivalent of the Chosen with less shield value, but they do have maces, which makes them armor-piercing in close quarters. You can't field too many of them, but they do make a nice core to your infantry lineups for Tolin Gaurhoth if you are so inclined. However, the real strength of Tolin Gaurhoth, and we can't really see too much of it right here as many of the units are hidden, is of course their wargs. So we're going to be seeing several units of the Hishbukraz Zagurkalab, which is black speech for the Ash Claws of the Witch Fort. Gulkala being the name that I made up in black speech for the orcs to describe Tolin Gaurhoth. The Hishbukraz Zagurkalab also attack morale with their flaming javelins, as they belong to a caste of orcs who are obsessed with fire and with burning their enemies alive. After they run out of ammunition, they are of course quite numerous, and they've got spears that they use in close quarters, which makes them quite nice against elephants, as we mentioned earlier, and against other mounted companies. So if you get gooned out by a large number of these guys, that's a really big problem, even for heavily armored and elite cavalry, because of the bonuses that that spear gives them. That being said, they are very, very light and completely unarmored, so horse archers basically hard counter these units in a really huge way. We're also going to be seeing, I think, some of the Laugskaraz Gulukalab, which are the blood drinkers of the Witch Fort, or something along that line. And they're a medium melee cavalry with armor piercing and a pretty decent charge bonus. Some of the other things you're not seeing in here are Hishbukraz hunters, which are low tier archers, and there's also some shock troops that you're going to see plenty of. Front lines here are going to be composed of Hishbukraz howlers, which are another locked morale tar pit. We have a few of these for the light low tier infantry. Seems to be the best way to make them usable in multiplayer. These guys, they get in the way, they have a decent charge value, they're also relentless so they can't be stunned, so they can be deceptively dangerous to light infantry, especially to light spearmen. Definitely something that you want to watch out for. And so, let's turn things up a little bit here. You can see the Mangonel firing overhead and getting some pretty nice shots into the horse archers of Mevin. Now, the thing to know about the Mangonel is that when it drops fire on the ground like that and you walk through that fire, yep, you're seeing it right here. You've got a couple of seconds where that fire is still deadly and will instantly kill anything that walks through it. So that actually turned out to be a really, really nice volley from the Mangonel there, and that's going to claim the lives of many of both the Salamandrine Guard and the lighter, less important Eastron horsemen. They didn't like that at all. You can see that they were already shaken out in front here. We've got some sentries of Gelion. These are the light horse archers from Ossiriand, and they're going to be tossing shots downrange here, probably trying to hit... I didn't realize these guys were on the field. This is the Legendary Company, another mid-tier Legendary Company from the Dominion of Tolin Gaurhoth. They are a locked morale unit, unlike the Laugskaraz, who they are a variant of. They are much lighter, but they are shielded. However, they do not have any armor piercing, and they are reasonably expensive, clocking in at about 820, whereas the Lausgaraz cost about half that. That being said, in forested areas like this, and this sort of forest terrain, the Vorbak Gajutar, the Blind Hunters, are at their best. That being said, they don't want to charge headlong into clouds of Ossiriand horse archers supported by the Easterlings, and of course my cavalry has now managed to make it to the front line here. I'm going to move forward with my Wall-Strider Dragoons and seek to support my allies who are laying down the pain from range. I've got Mardrot here, then I'm going to keep them in reserve, and the rest of my infantry, my high-end infantry, Ulfadin, Skaldmare, and all that nasty stuff is going to be heading over this direction as well. I have, as I mentioned, left an ambush here for Tolin Gaurahoth, and I wanted to wait for them to come into this fairly narrow path where they wouldn't be able to use their numbers very effectively, and if possible, push all the way in to the Mangonel. However, Wally Wolf is not going to go quietly into that good night, and those Hispokraz Howlers and his front line are going to move to block the advance from my Halidin light infantry as we move on to the crest of this hill. And this is going to prove to be a fairly fateful decision for my light infantry, and you'll see why in just a few moments. Rigsware here, I'm trying to get them into a good position where they can just get set up as quickly as possible and toss Javies into the Hispokraz Howlers. I also left a little bit of support over here in the form of my Freisware. They're getting set up. I'm going to try and take advantage of the unshielded nature of those Howlers. And I've also got Mevin here guarding my back line and laying down the pain as the Howlers move forward. In order to give my Rigsware a little bit of extra time to set up, I'm going to toss the Warda of Brethil in there. Normally the thing you want to do with spears is get them braced and allow them to reflect the charge damage back at the enemies that collide with them. However, we're not really going to have a chance to do that as time was of the essence. So my Rigsware here starting to get set up to toss into the Howlers, and hopefully we should be able to destroy them quickly. So far things are panning out more or less the way we need them to. I've got my Warda on the front line blocking the advanced units of Tolin Gaurahoth. I've got my Rigsware here setting up to toss into some of the lighter units such as the Scarhide Trappers. Looks like we missed them in the comps. They were probably hiding. These are armor-piercing javelin men, but fairly light on armor, about 6 or so armor and no shields. So the 8 damage of my Rigsware would actually do a lot to counter these guys and to make sure that they can't get much value. But bad news bears, Scarhide Bloodtriggers moving in response, and with the support of these javelins, they're going to give my Warda what for. They're already starting to take some pretty serious losses here. Armor piercing is going to have their shield value, and their armor value is not terribly impressive, of only being about 4. And they're going to follow that up with a charge here from the Scarhide Bloodtriggers, and this is not good at all. So, trying to get my Rigsware into position, desperately moving as quickly as possible. I really want them to throw at the trappers, but maybe the Bloodtriggers would be an easier, a little bit of an easier target. My Freisware now hiding, biding their time, and we've got some reinforcements from Angband that have moved in over here. Troll Guard and the Wolf Riders of Angband smashing into my Rigsware. Many of these units actually weren't even able to throw their javelins, so a nice counterplay here from the red team. Scarhide Trappers have now moved forward, and they're taking advantage of how blobbed up my troops are, and my Rigsware are just getting decimated. They are locked morale, so they will fight to the bitter end, but I'm not going to be able to get much value off of them. They're not incredibly cheap. They're only about 640, but it's still quite a lot, and you need to be able to have those units at peak performance in order to get back what you paid for them. Now we have the heavies moving forward, Gijak Skada's units here, and we can see the Mangonel from Wally Wolf has begun to set its sights on that hilltop. Now, the Mangonel is something I wanted to take out if possible. I just wasn't able to get through the numbers of Tolin Gaurahoth. Maybe I should have picked my moment a little bit more wisely, but now that he's managed to make it clear of that scrap in the forest, he knows exactly where my troops are, and this is going to be so ugly. Look at that. Fire raining down from the sky at multiple points along my line. That's going to be enough to rout my Warda of Brethil, send them screaming from this hilltop. And the same can be said for this unit of Warda. And now my lines have been broken up. The Halidin have fantastic morale, But that fire coming down from the sky, it spooks even the hardiest, most battle-hardened of warriors in Middle-earth, and they're going to be sent fleeing, and a big breakthrough from Tolin Gauderhoth and Wally Wolf is going to take place here. Just a wave of howlers and chosen gushing forth through that section of my line like blood bursting from an open wound, and now my Freyswear are in serious trouble. What do you even do when you're a light spearman who's not really suited for close combat? And you see that charging downhill against you. Now, some of these Warda will come back, and that's pretty important. But for right now, yep, a whole lot of spearmen rushing off the field and straight into the jaws of the Throng Sheik Wolfborn. Now, routing units like this, they basically die no matter what touches them. And so a wave of wargs going to come in here, very well positioned as well by Wally Wolf. He's going to gobble up both of my units at the same time. And my Warda of Brethil are going to evaporate and wither away under that terrible charge. Now, I can see what's happening here. I know my Waltrider Wainriders are not to be trifled with in melee when it comes to fighting cavalry. So I'm going to throw them in here. Meanwhile, Howlers and Chosen have rushed down the hill, and they're giving my Freyswear what for. Things are going not so great for me at the moment. Now we get to see some of the power of the Waltrider Dragoons here when it comes to fighting cavalry. And they're going to smash into those Throng Sheik Wolfborn. Wally Wolf is going to see it. He will pull out, but he's going to lose about 20% of that unit to a single charge from the Waltrider Wainriders. Very, very scary indeed. And I've also brought forth some of my Mardrot. I know that if I can goon both of them onto the Throng Sheik Wolfborn, especially if they're going to be busy trying to go after my Warda of Brethil. Now, these guys were routing just a moment ago, and I think Wally Wolf was trying to run them down, but they came back just at the right moment. Now we have javelins raining down, claiming the lives of these Throng Sheik elite riders, and I've also got my Waltrider Dragoons in behind them. They're laying down a little bit of supporting fire, trying to keep the Freyswear of Brethil intact, but I'm also going to move to try and cut off the retreat of the Throng Sheik Wolfborn. And once I have myself in position here, we've got a nice little pincer movement, and he sees that there's no way to go. So he's going to charge headlong at my Mardrot, try and take some of them with him, but we're actually going to deny him that charge with our Waltriders. Smash into the wing. Javelins are going to continue to be thrown, and those Throng Sheik are going to evaporate in just a few moments. And this is going to be all we see of them. All they managed to do this game was to run down a few routing Warda. And this is huge for us. If they managed to get in behind our lines here, we would be in so much trouble. So over here in the center, things are just ugly. This is some Battle of the Bastards levels of chaos. Mevin has brought forward his Ravagers of Himring, and they're holding back much of the victorious Tolin Gauderhoth infantry. Stewie has sent over some support as well in the form of Ironshod Legionaries. We had a Mangonel lay some fire down here, but it looks like that probably carved through more Orc infantry than it did anything else. You can see some ranged units in the back. Hishbulkraz Hunters have come out of hiding. Got some Skartahai Longfangs as well moving forward. They are equipped with throwing axes and can be very, very scary against the lightly armored Easterling troops from the Olfang subfaction. This is not looking great for us. We're kind of losing at basically every point along the line here. Now I'm just going to turn down the sound just a little bit, as I feel it's probably a tad too loud. There we go. That's a little bit better. Some Ravagers have been brought forward as well. Two-handed, heavily armored axemen with armor piercing. They are cutting their way through these Ravagers, and these guys are kind of just trying to play for time, really. Luckily, there is help on the way. Got some Salamandrine Guard, a whole bunch of Horse Archers and stuff in the back. I kept two of my Freyswear in reserve and brought them around the mountainside through the pass with the rest of my Ulfadin and Shield Maidens, so I'm going to move in with a couple lines of the Freyswear as well. And this is going to be where things could potentially turn around. Oh, more fire from the sky. Really more friendly fire, however, than anything else, and that's one of the dangers of using the Mangonel. We saw how devastating it was to those troops up there on the hill, but it is a double-edged sword. Sometimes you're going to fricassee a huge number of your own troops. And that's exactly what happened here. I think a lot of those Wolfguard got clipped by the Mangonel, and this field here is just on fire in so many places. Over here, Skartahai Longfangs, along with some other troops from Wally Wolf. I think he's got his Ash Priest in there, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I don't see them. It might just be a couple units of Longfangs, but I think he wants to get around this side and lay down some Throwing Axe Paint into the Ravagers of Heimring. That would probably kill about half the remaining unit, but we're not going to give him that opportunity. I've also come forward with my Welsh Riders. I've been very aggressive against some of these units here that Angband had deployed out front, but unfortunately in the chaos I did kind of lose micro on them a little bit. But I will regain it fairly quickly, and I see some opportunities here. Scarhide Longfangs being axe units don't have a ton of melee defense, so the base 12 damage on the Wolf Rider, not the Wolf Riders, rather the Welsh Rider Dragoons, is actually going to be pretty strong against them when they get that charge off. That being said, Stu's not going to let it go all my way. He's going to countercharge with those Iron Shod Ravagers and try and pull me off of his ally, which he will successfully do. Many of my Dragoons here are going to have to retreat through the Ravagers, but at the very least, it will pull them out of this fight here with the Ravagers of Heimring, and they're going to have an opportunity to pull this infantry fight back now that those two-handed axemen have disengaged. Oh, that's so painful. Mangonel hit to the face here for the Easterling Horsemen. I brought forward my my Mardrot here, and I'm looking for some good units to charge down. Now, the Ironshot Legionaries do have good armor, but it's not as high as the charge value of the Mardrot, and their melee defense is next to nothing. So we can charge them down from the front and have a fairly decent result, but that especially goes for the Longfangs over here. Now, most of my units have been cleared off of this hill. Tolin Gauderhoth is kind of in the ascendancy when it comes to this side of things, but we're going to get aggressive. We're going to take the Mardrot, use them to support the Welsh Riders, and we're going to go after some of these Hishpukraz units. Now, being Spear Cavalry, they have decent enough bonuses against the class of unit that the Welsh Rider Wain Riders are. They are elephants, and they do have all the strengths and weaknesses of such a unit. That being said, rear charges here into the Hishpukraz. They're going to hit them hard. The Mardrot of Malduin are not too far behind, and we're going to have an opportunity here to strike back against Tol in Gauderhoth and really just shatter their cavalry arm. We've taken out the Thrangshik. There's still the Vorbak somewhere out there in the center, but I think they're engaged in some pretty heavy combat right now, so they're not able to come to the assistance of these units. And now a nice little rear charge here from our own Spear Cavalry should be enough to see these depleted Hishpukraz off. Another charge over here from the Welsh Rider Wain Riders. We're going to smash into these Hishpukraz, and we might start to see a little bit of routing here, and that's going to be bad news bears for Tolin Gauderhoth, because at this point, they've been deprived of a good deal of their mobility, and that's the biggest strength of this faction. Now, they smashed my light infantry corps, went through it like it wasn't even there with that Mangonel support, but we are going to take away their greatest strength, and that is going to be their mobility. Stu has also come over here with some Tormentors of the Iron Crown, and one heroic band of Warda of Brethil. Now, I want to pretend that this is just them being incredibly brave, but I actually kind of lost micro on them, and then I came back over here to micro these two units, and I'm like, oh, there are spearmen here. They're going to die off, but they're going to do so in glorious fashion, engaging the Tormentors of the Iron Crown. That's at least going to prevent them from perhaps countercharging my Welsh Rider Wain Riders and taking them down in close quarters. That'll give us the opportunity that we need to smash the Hishpukraz, and that's basically it for the Tolin Gauderhoth cavalry lineup. They're gone. They're just not there. We managed to delete them with these two units of chariots and spear cavalry, and that's going to be a nice win for us. Some chosen here being brought back to possibly defend against a concerted assault, but seeing what's happening here and seeing that we've managed to do a decent amount of damage, I'm going to try and salvage what I've got left here. I'm going to take my Mardrot, I'm going to take the Welsh Riders, and we're going to swing around this cliff, and we'll rejoin them in just a little while. Meanwhile, over here, Welsh Rider Dragoons, with the support of our allies, have managed to clear out a large number of Tolin Gauderhoth units. But the Ash Priest's moving forward here, and I'm not going to see this in time. So the Ash Priests closing in on my Welsh Riders. Oh, actually, I will see it in time. I'm going to try and get them out of there. I think what he wants to do is countercharge them here. But when you're trying to do that with a missile unit and they still have primary ammunition, it takes them a little bit of extra time to set up for that charge. So we are actually going to be able to get out of there before the worst happens. But the assault hasn't relented. I've been forced now to bring forward my Ulfadin. They're fantastic at grinding away at chaff, which is most of what this is. There are, of course, some Troll Guard over here as well. And my Ulfadin have pushed hard into an Orc Mangonel's crew, helping the Easterlings here to rout off some of these units. Scarhigh Longfangs in the back, targeting down my Ulfadin, which is not a good thing. A close quarters volley is going to shave off a lot of HP from these valuable, expensive units, and they're still pretty healthy. Don't want that to happen. But we are on the cusp of breaking through here and getting in to those Longfangs. And I think I'll use some cavalry in a little bit to try and deal with them if possible. Amar is not going to let his allies do all the fighting for him. He's going to move forward with some swordsmen of Talathirin. It looks like he's targeting the Ravagers of Heimring there, trying to eliminate this blob in an efficient and probably the most efficient way possible. Really takes a long time to kill the Ravagers of Heimring in close quarters because there's so many of them, but if you're tossing javelins and other nasty things like throwing axes, it kills them off pretty quick. So range, definitely the most efficient way to deal with these guys, and they are starting now to fall away. Ulfadin moving over here to assist some other Ulfadin who are in turn being attacked by reinforcements from King Amar. My Ulfadin here pressed on two sides by halberdiers, and there's some other swordsmen of Talathirin over here as well. Basically being squeezed between three different units, are now going to get some much needed help, and they're going to rout off these Ironshod halberdiers. They are a fear-causing unit, and these Ironshods were already having a bad time, and that's going to turn the tables here. The balance of power has really switched in this particular area. More reinforcements moving forward now. Sentries of Gelion, more Easterlings, seemingly unending tide of Easterlings just coming out of the woodwork and being put exactly where they need to be. You got to hand it to Mevin. He's playing this game so well. Friceware in the back now. I can see that the Ash Priests are actually beginning to move forward, and so I'm targeting them down with everything I've got. The light armor is going to make these guys fear the Friceware of Brethil. That being said, Stewie can see what's going on here, and some of the Troll Guard have made their way into my Friceware, and they're smashing them up, just turning them into paste. I've got them in defensive formation, which is why they're still able to fire, but yeah, those Troll Guard are going to make sure that these Friceware are not long for this world. Cheeky little charge here into the Hishpokraz Ash Priests. Not sure that's the best idea. There are some Salamandry Guard mixed in there as well, which is, you know, not the worst. But look at that. Look at that. As that charge damage is finally registered on the unit, it's just like a cloud of Horse Archers that go down. And now some Spearmen are being brought in as well. Nice play here from Wally Wolf, trying to make sure that his important units stay in the game. And he's going to actually envelop the Easterlings cavalry on both sides here. It looks like the Salamandrine Guard are probably going to be the only ones who make it out of this alive. Or we could see some mass breaking from the cavalry here as well, which is going to open up a huge gap in our line. We don't really have any other reserves other than some of my Ulfadin who've been kind of hovering around, slaying orcs with impunity. But I got nothing else here. My Skaldmare are somewhere around here. We don't actually see too much of them until later. But luckily we have some cavalry forward, but there is no infantry buffer between us, Ash Priests, and a whole bunch of Tolan Gaudhoth high-end infantry and reinforcements. Some ragged groups of units now coming into the fray here. A bunch of Hishpokraz Hunters, Howlers. A second company of the Hishpokraz Howlers here as well. Very scary for my Ulfadin. So there's been sort of back and forth on this side, but now we're looking at like the final push here from Tolan Gaudhoth, and that is gonna be ugly. Now, I think my cavalry... Oh, here's my my Skaldmare. Oh, some nasty catapult volleys into the Easterlings who are all bunched up here. Kinsmen of Denethor holding the line. Some more Troll Guard from Stewie. Stewie's just microing on like 3 different fronts right here. The Spoilers clashing with the Tormentors who are getting the worst of that engagement. But I'm pretty sure... Yes, here's my cavalry. So we managed to come from behind here and get around this Tolan Gaudhoth army. They didn't see us coming through that pass. I think he might have forgot about my cavalry. And as all of those units were shifted towards the front, we're going to push in with everything we got to try and make sure they stay there. And so that things like this can happen, where the Gijek Scout has chosen trying to come to the aid of the back lines. And this just blob of horsemen here is just going to destroy the Hishpokraz Hunters. They're super low morale units, and it's going to be pretty easy to deal with them. Hishpokraz Hunters here getting picked on by my Welsh Riders, who got a nice little charge in there. That being said, the Welsh Riders are super fragile in close quarters. You're going to see one of them go down. Don't want to leave them in there for too long. Gonna follow that up with a charge here against Scarhide Bloodtriggers. Not something I normally recommend you do, unless you could do it this way. You want to deny shock units, especially axe units, that charge bonus, because they're low on melee defense, and the only way that they can trade efficiently against cavalry charges is to get that charge off. But seeing the opportunity there, instead of going into the hunters we probably could have routed, I decided to go for the Scarhide Bloodtriggers, and I think that that was probably the right choice. Got my Welch Riders in there as well to try and pin them in place so that my Mardrot can now get out and then focus their attention on these Hishbukraz hunters. Over here, Trappers getting picked on by my Wayne Riders. Going to do a decent amount of damage to them and just make sure that these units are not able to support the front line, which is the really scary thing that was happening earlier. Oh, that would be the telltale sign of the Ash Priest bombs. They create this inferno that engulfs their target, but there's also this big blinding cloud of smoke. And there's really nothing that we have right now that we want to get near the Ash Priest. I could send my cavalry at them, but they'll just get eaten. Ash Priests, you want to stay away from them. You want to use missiles or something, anything really. But I don't want to get my cavalry anywhere near them, so they're going to have a great opportunity here. Focus on some of that cavalry. You can see that they're shaken. They don't like getting big, scary, fiery smoke bombs tossed into their face, and I don't blame them. Ulfadin and Brandir here, starting to lose ground against the Gijak Skeda as Wolfguard, as the forces of the Dominion of Tolin Gaudahoth rally for a final push here, looking to break this wing and then roll up the rest of our war effort. We're not going to let it happen though. Chosen here getting charged in the flank by my Mardrot. I'm going to follow it up with another charge here from my Mardrot. This is a little bit too blobby. Not really the most effective charge here, but we will be able to, clip a few more of these spearmen and maybe frighten them off the field. I've, of course, also got some Ulfadin here as well. I should be charging them into this Gijak Skeda as Chosen and try to free up as much resources for our team as I possibly can. I also got some Welch Riders over here in the back that I'm trying to micro, taking down the Hishbukraz hunters, making sure that this entire support back line cannot be used against us. Tormentors of the Iron Crown, however, have something to say about that. They're going to charge headlong into the Outriders of Dweilwyn. Now, Spear Cavalry, like other spear units in the game, take some pretty serious penalties when fighting infantry, so they don't want to stick in that fight at all. If these guys can't get their charge bonus off, they're just going to get cut to pieces by the Tormentors. Their name is very apt. They'll make it slow, but it'll be painful and it'll be efficient. Meanwhile, over here, complete mess in the back. Hishbukraz Howlers trying to just do what they can, really. They're not suited for this kind of combat, and they have no particular bonuses, and they don't have the mobility to keep up with me, but this is all that Wally Wolf has left. And if we take a look here, let's slow it down so we don't miss anything. But if you take a look at everything that's transpired here, it's just been disastrous. Just mud and blood and piles of bodies everywhere. Truly, this is the end times. Merry Christmas to you all. My Welch Riders here, still harassing the back lines, trying to just destroy whatever we can. I'm feeling reasonably confident at this point. There are still some pretty stiff pockets of resistance, not least of which, of course, is the Ash Priests. But if you can get a charge into the rear, if you're quick and the enemy doesn't see it, you can do a decent amount of damage. That being said, it is still 3 HP per model, not something that's going to disappear easily and without a fight. Welch Rider Dragoons now, down to, on basically their last legs, maybe about 13 or so of them in total. I can see the Ash Priests coming in. I know what they're going for, and I want to get a nice little counter charge here, but don't see it. Not in time to save my Welch Riders, and they're just going to get eviscerated by those Ash Priests. That being said, they won't all perish here. I'm going to follow that up with a nice charge from the rear from the Mardrot of Malduin. And that'll hurt the Ash Priests. And down goes the Tolin Gaudahoth General. A really important victory here. So we've managed to break Tolin Gaudahoth, although heroic struggle. They smashed through my ambush, pushed over here wave after wave with varying success, just ebbing back and forth between both sides like the tide. But also like the tide, they are inevitably going to recede, and the blue team is going to be the one who comes out on top in this particular section of the battlefield. but it's gross. Both sides, everyone looking ragged. Most of Mevin's cavalry has been slaughtered. I think some of his infantry are currently over here fighting remnants of Steward of Dale's forces. Trogard of Gothmog have set their sights on some hunters of Rathloriel. If they're not able to get a volley off before these guys get in there, they are going to take some pretty serious casualties. That being said, the Trollguard are obviously quite weak at this point. Having done a lot of fighting, they've lost about half of their number, a little bit over half actually. So they're going to crash into the hunters of Rathloriel. They'll probably manage to kill, I don't know, 20, 30 of them maybe. But this is not a fight they're going to be able to win. That being said, it will tie them down. And if we move over here, we can see small pockets of green elves. Uru Loki in the fight as well. Hunting down to these skirmishes of Rathloriel. These big boys are hungry and they are about to feast. These skirmishes of Rathloriel really have no answers. They have melee defense to try and stay alive. But the high armor and the lack of a shield value means that at ranged or in close quarters, the Uru Loki are going to trample all over them. I see some hunters here trying to make a little bit of distance. I think Steward maybe wants to hunt them down. They're more of a priority asset. Now, the spears will give them some bonuses against elephants, but if Steward of Dale can either kill them or bring them down to like very, very low numbers, 20, 30 men, he's going to severely limit the effectiveness of such a unit in the long term. So I think that's going to be where his head's at here as he moves those Uru Loki towards the hunters of Rathloriel. Meanwhile, over here, you can see the Easterlings have launched a ill-fated attack. Oh, there goes my general. I was moving my Skaldmare across the field. They actually got caught on like 3 nearly destroyed bulldogs, and my general got caught and gangbanged out there in the woods. It was terrible. But these Marauders of Himring here are launching an attack against Nargothrond, but they're going to encircle him. This is some like Ramsay Bolton plays right here. There's gonna be pikemen on all sides, spearmen, and these Marauders are not long for this world. And that's gonna give Amar the opportunity here to go forward and be aggressive. Now, marksmen, we're gonna get to see them in action finally. Get to see that split shot as it goes downwind here. I think it's probably gonna go after the skirmishers of Rathloriel. I would think so. Let's go ahead and kick that into full speed. No, they're sort of spread out here, slowly trying to warm up their shots. Yeah, that seems to be like a cohesion sort of pathfinding issue here, so we're going to go ahead and turn it back down. From downtown, though, you're starting to see a lot of the Archers of Talathirnan raining down death and destruction. Meanwhile, over here, the Green Elves still kind of holding their ground, sparring at ranged with the House of Finarfin. It's been pretty static over here, but now the front is starting to push and shift towards Amar's side. There go the Marauders of Himring. Amar is just going to gobble these units up as they kind of come at him piecemeal. He's going to have an opportunity here to defeat a lot of Easterling units in detail, which is great news for him. Now, Marksman of Nargothrond, let's finally see these guys pop some shots off. And there it is, those little orange chemtrails that are the telltale sign that you're about to get punched in the face. They're firing right into the rear of the skirmishers of Rathloriel, who are pinned in place by Sartor Findorado. This is the bodyguard of Finrod himself, the Lord of Nargothrond. He's pinning a whole bunch of light infantry in place so that his marksmen can just skewer them. And this is just ugly. This is about to be a pocket of dead green elves. So you got to hand it to Amar here. He's really holding his own against a whole bunch of those different ragtag forces that have come wide at him, and he's handling it very, very admirably. The skirmishers there are getting absolutely eviscerated. And finally, things are starting to wind down to a close here. Most of the Tolin Gauderhoth units have been destroyed. I was forced to bring my Skaldmare over here. There's 3 units missing, or like 6 of them, and one of them is my general. So I've actually lost my general at this point. Not the worst thing in the world for the Haladin, as they have fantastic morale values, but still, it sucks, especially moving into that late game where a break can mean the difference between winning and losing. Routing off some of the last of the Tolin Gauderhoth army here, and launching some rear charges into the Tormentors of the Iron Crown, who are smashing up these light infantry. Stu's going to see it, countercharge. I think this is going to be the end of my poor chariots. Yeah, this one's going to charge a little bit too deep. They're not meant for fighting infantry, We're just using them opportunistically, so they don't have a lot of mass. It's really easy for them to get stuck. And both my chariots are going to get flattened here. They will be avenged, however, by a vicious charge from the Outriders of Dwylwyn. Light Lancers from Ossiriand can also hide anywhere, so fantastic at launching ambushes. And now I'm basically down to a unit of Friceware, a handful of cavalry who have performed so admirably in this game. I think I have a few Ulfadin left, but nothing major, about 14 or so Ulfadin, and a nearly full health unit of the Skaldmere. Who are, I don't know what they're shooting, but they should not be shooting anything because there's just routing units over here. So I'm going to loop back with everything that I've got left. You can already see my cavalry, my Mardront, advancing over here, looking to try and make a difference, but the House of Finarfin, very, very defensive, very, very tanky, and this sort of advanced guard here has blunted the initial assaults. There goes the skirmishers of Rathloriel, getting pancaked by trolls, run over by these elite elven spearmen. I'm going to follow it up there with a minor pursuit. They're not going to go too far. The Wardens of Nargothrond, who are escorting the General's bodyguard here. There's some nasty units that are forming up in the back. Some of the best of the Nargothrond lineup. We've got bridge wards here forming a wall, just a picket of pikes. Company of Prince Gwyndor sallying forward. They're reasonably fast. Looks like someone managed to destroy one of these catapults as well, which is kind of cool. Oh, I see what it is. Yeah, it's probably the throwing axis here. But yeah, they're about to get run over by a combination of Sartar Findorado and the Wardens of Nargothrond. Over here, the company of Prince Gwyndor, making sure that these units stay gone. Troll Guard, still 3 of them. Probably should be pulled back at this point. I'm sure Stewie will preserve their numbers for a later date. And over here, some more Wardens who are defending the wing of this advance, being pulled back. Finarfin trying to keep it tight. There's still lots of moving pieces, lots of Easterlings and mobile Haladin and Ossiriand units, so want to keep it tight so that you don't find yourself surrounded and losing numbers in the face of a more or less untested Green Elf army, except for the Udurloki here. Yeah, Stu recognizes the threat that these Hunters of Rathloriel pose. I don't think they're going to have a chance. Oh, they might. He's going after the Sentries of Gelion here. If these Javies get a chance to warm up, I think that could be the end of these Udurloki. Nope, they're going to get in. Yep, none of those Javies are going to go off, although it will come in from the rear. A second company covering these Hunters of Rathloriel. And all it's going to take is just one more volley. And Stu's not going to be able to turn around quick enough. The Udurloki can be quite ponderous. And that's going to be game over. Down go the Udurloki. They've been swept from the field. And that's basically it for all of the forces that the red team have arrayed out here. They're going to live or die by the stand that King Amar makes and the choices that he puts into action. That being said, he's got a lot in his favor. Archers of Talatyrnan still obviously have a lot of ammunition. He's got marksmen, he's got the company of Prince Gwyndor, he's got Sartor Findorado, he's got pikes. This fight is not nearly over. And actually, if we look at it here, it's only about a 6% or so difference. And he's got a catapult online too. Ooh, just narrowly skirting over the heads of my ladies, but they're not going to be lucky the second and third times. And those Skaldmere are going to get pancaked in a fiery blaze. Easterling Marauders moving forward. They definitely want to destroy the catapult. I could do the same with my throwing axes, but I kind of don't want to. My ammunition is a little bit more valuable. It is armor piercing as well, so a lot of these units like the Wardens of Nargothrond, very tightly packed, and especially the Sartor Findorado. If we can assassinate Amar's general, that is going to be, I think, the key to victory here, and that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to try and save the ammunition that they do have for a rainy day. Ooh, nasty. Another handful of shield maidens going down there. Amar slowly chipping away at the only real advantage that I have left as the Haladin. I've got some Berserkers and some Friceware who are hanging around here somewhere. Yeah, there's the Berserkers, there's my Friceware, and a handful of cavalry, but the shield maidens are... This is the killing power of the ragtag remnants I have remaining to me. Looks like another one of those catapults is going to go down. I thought I heard another one collapse. That's probably due to the Easterling Marauders, who very narrowly escaping from a countercharge there from the Wardens. This is actually not a bad target for my Shield Maidens. Looking back, you know, maybe this would have been the right thing to do. But I think what was in my head at the time is that I wanted to save it for the General's Bodyguard if I could. They were already kind of down on numbers. We can only just find them. And they had about 47 or so remaining out of the regular 60. So they've had some damage done to them, some chip damage for sure. And if I can take advantage of that and thin out their numbers and kill the General, and that's just massive. Oh yeah, they were over here. Sartor Findorado, about 44 still remaining. Turen Turambar, who is currently the default general for Nargothrond. That is something that will change in the future, but for now, he is the leader. He is the chief, the commander-in-chief of the forces of Nargothrond. And he is, of course, dressed in his dwarf mask that he found within the bowels of the armories of Nargothrond. And he's got his black blade, his famous sword, Gurthang. Skaldmare here, going for a charge along with my Ulfadin, trying to surround and pound this catapult crew. Rout them off if possible with a double charge here from two separate fear-causing units. And a catapult on the verge of collapse. Being attacked from the rear, partially, almost entirely surrounded. There's some ugly things that are sort of looming upon the horizon, and one of those dark clouds being, of course, the marksman. Oh, I've got the Angband General over here, too. Stewie somehow managed to sacrifice his general. I definitely have a bone to pick with these Bulldogs who assassinated my own general. He's got a small retinue of Troll Guard here. I think that's most of the Angband forces that are still on the field. And I can see these marksmen reloading, wanting to lay down some flanking fire into my Shield Maidens, and that is going to eviscerate them. I don't want to let this happen, and I'm willing to sacrifice my cavalry to make sure that it doesn't. So, cavalry here, being used a little bit more indecisively than I think they needed to be. I could see those trolls there, and I like briefly reconsidered, and then I was like, no, maybe not. My poor Skaldmare are gonna get just devastated if I leave them in the line of fire from those marksmen for too long. So we're gonna juke the trolls there, try and push through them. Oh, there goes the Angband General. Waltrider going toe-to-toe with them, issuing some orders there to the Bulldog before he has his head taken off by one of the few remaining Waltrider Dragoons, thereby avenging the fall of our own general. My Skaldmare, surprisingly enough, managed to stand up to that initial volley, not lose any models, which is just great luck on our part, really. The Easterlings now have brought in some reinforcements, and we're looking to storm this position here and to catch these marksmen of Nargothrond, who I think just ran out of ammunition. And they might countercharge here? Nope, they still have ammo, so this is going to be a big old loss here for Amar, getting these marksmen caught out. I'm going to take my cavalry, swing around him as quickly and immediately as possible before he has an opportunity to try and disengage with the marksmen. I want to charge in from the rear if at all possible. Maybe rout them off. Although, maybe this caught my attention here as well, as the Green Elves have now moved in, and you're sort of seeing one of the big weaknesses of playing as Ossiriand. A straight fight, especially against well-trained, well-armored forces with your infantry, almost never going to go well for you, especially when you're fighting pikes, and these are the best pikes found anywhere in the mod. And all across the line here, the Green Elves are being chewed up by House Finarfin. Some minor reinforcements being brought in. 61 or so of the Spear Host of Gelion have just been absolutely eviscerated, I presume, by Archers of Talathirnin. Hunters of Rathloriel looking to focus on this big old blob forming in the center here, which is a good idea. This is a great way to sort of punish your enemies as the Green Elves, and you have a lot of ways to do so. Be they Lancer charges, be they concentrated Archer volleys, or Javelin volleys, or the Ranger unit that Ossiriand have that nobody else can really boast in the entirety of the mod. But, that being said, the infantry fight here is not going well, except in a few places. Mythrin and Tolgalen have been brought forward. With those maces, they smash up heavy armor nicely, but with cavalry support, they're going to have no problem in hacking their way through Stalkers of Tauren and Falroth. These are light shock ambush infantry with some really good melee defense values, pretty good charge values, and higher base damage than you would expect from a sword. That being said, with the support that the Outriders of Dweilwyn are giving them here, and the fact that they're not fighting behind these stakes, which I think is a mistake, these guys are going to evaporate pretty quickly, already down to Shaken. Out here on the wings, Kinsmen of Denethor going toe-to-toe with the Stalkers. But these guys are locked. They will not be going anywhere. Marksman of Nargothrond now being brought forth, probably because he wants to get rid of these Outriders of Dweilwyn forever, if at all he can. And some more Outriders over here, and a second company of Mythern have pushed against the Archers of Talathirnin. A really, so far, very effective, and I think well-conceived flanking movement here from Demon's Hunter, who, as I said, is new at playing Ossiriand. And so far, he's doing pretty well. This straight fight here, I think I asked him to move in, but in hindsight, probably a bit of a mistake. On the wings, he's managing to do very well for himself, but in the center, the Green Elves just got nothing that can stand up to all that heavy infantry, those pikes, and already the company of Prince Gwyndor have managed to break through, and they're looking to pressure the scouts of Gelion. So immediately upon seeing this, Demon's Hunter, he doesn't want nothing to do with this. The company of Prince Gwyndor will take their time of it, but they will chew through scouts of Gelion like nobody's business. Like a dog with a bone, these guys will just rend and tear until it's done. And so he's going to get them out of there as quickly as possible. These are really, really important units for Ossiriand, and with concentrated volleys of fire, uninterrupted, they can do all kinds of crazy, miraculous things. So, Arvernien Tower now brought forward as well, peppering down whatever he's able to shoot at, basically. There's not really any good targets here from the front. This is like the heavy Nargothrond sort of meat and potatoes of their army. Over here on the wings, the Skaldmare charging in to the Wardens of Nargothrond. This is one of the few units still remaining on the field that we have that could really go toe-to-toe with this heavy Nargothrond infantry. So we're going to go ahead, turn things up a little bit here. Sartor Findorado. I tried to go after his general. You can see my cavalry. This is actually the hill that they chose to die on. I could see them over here, and I tried to countercharge against the Sartor Findorado and to get in from behind them and angle it such that I'd always be hitting the general. Just wasn't able to do it, unfortunately. I'm trying to do the same with my Ulfodin as well, so I'm gonna take a small little squad of my few remaining Ulfodin here. We're gonna take them and we're gonna position them such, and this is actually an important thing I think that you can do in your battles as well. This is like the essence of general sniping, basically. The general is always in the same place when it's in a unit that's acting as its bodyguard. It's always on the left-hand side, and it's always at the back of the bannermen and that sort of thing. So if you can like angle your cavalry charges, especially lancer charges, such that you hit them straight on, you're gonna hit that general. You're gonna hit him with a truckload of damage, and he's gonna die off. That being said, not going so well for me here. My Ulfodin not really going where I needed them to go, and one of them getting skewered by the banner carrier. So I'm going to pull them out again. We're going to try to do the same thing. I don't want to just leave him in there to die. We have an opportunity here to go after Turin. We're going to try and take it. Alas, they won't get their charge value off. They are kind of exhausted at this point, so it's not an easy thing to do. They will get a couple of swipes at Turin, but in short order, both of them are going to get skewered. Down goes one, and then Turin, he's had enough of my Ulfodin stuff, and he's just going to run him through. With a little bit of help here from his Sartor Findorado bodyguard, he's going to accomplish that with astounding grace. I'm going to split him in half, and there goes my last hope. But luckily, Demon's Hunter is here, coming in for a clutch charge from the rear with the cavalry, smashing into the Sartor Findorado, and they are starting to be overwhelmed here. And because everything else is engaged with the Green Elves, there's not really a whole lot he can send quickly to the aid of his allies. He has managed to break most of the Green Elf force and just smash on through their lines, but there's still small pockets here of Green Elf resistance. There's still archers, Arvernien Tower, and other such things in the back that he's going to have to contend with, and he's just not going to have time to get over here and to save his general. So let's go ahead, turn up to full speed here as we're coming down to the final stretches of this match. Another nice charge there from the Outriders. They don't want to stay in CQB with the Sartor Federado for too long, but they have enough melee defense that they can leave them in there and try and deal that extra damage. Another nice charge there. The Sartor Federado are falling by the moment. They were at 31 a moment ago, now down to 8. That being said, Turin hasn't died until he meets my Skaldmare face to face, and finally that general has gone down, and that's a really important moment. That's going to, not only is it going to impact their morale later into the match and make them less likely to return and more likely to rout, it is also going to send a temporary ripple of panic down their line. It's going to hit them with a morale debuff. And now these Wardens of Nargothrond still 34 strong. I've seen them hold out against greater odds than this with less numbers, and they're going to break and flee. That being said, let's take stock of what Nargothrond still has. This is kind of brilliant. I love what Demons has done here. So he's brought his Mythern in and around and engaged this Phalanx, pinned it in place with their backs facing to his Scouts of Gelion that he saved on the other end of the field. They're going to get a nice rear charge there with the Arvernien Tower. And still, there's going to be a nice little area open. I think Demons wanted to go for a counter charge against the rear of the pikes with the Outriders of Dweilwyn, but I'm going to slow it down here just to tell you why that's probably not the best idea. So when you're playing against experienced players, and MR is certainly one, he's a very, very good player, what you're going to see is people turn around and face you because they know that if they just do nothing, the impact is going to be way, way worse. So there is a fun little activity where you're like baiting out charges and things like that. But even if you successfully bait out a charge and charge home into a pike unit, they're still going to turn around and they're going to eviscerate your cavalry. You can get away with that with spearmen, but not with phalanx units like halberds, two-handed spears, and especially pikemen. So what he's doing now is actually a really, really good thing. Avoiding that fight entirely. We're going to try and just surround them with infantry. But the company of Prince Gwyndor looking pretty ragged here. They're an easy enough target. This is pretty crazy. I would have gone a different way, personally. You're going to see a lot of these guys die. Some of them are going to die on impact. And they're very, very precious. Well, that's going to be a hard lesson right there. So about a quarter of the unit or so died. And now I think he's going to switch tack and go after the company of Prince Nargothrond. Or he's going to go over here. Yeah, not a bad target either. Archers of Talathirin, being a skirmisher, don't have melee stats. So their melee defense, despite hitting with sword, is a little bit on the lower end. So they're a fair target to use for the Outriders there. But now he's kind of back behind his lines, but isn't exactly where he wants to be. So he's going to come back out, I think, through this gap. Oh, no, he's going to charge into the Archers of Talathirin and make sure they stay gone. And that the Mythern and Tolgalen can hold on for just a little bit longer. Still pretty healthy, too. 44, 45 Mythern. That's going to be enough to break those Archers of Talathirin here. Let's go ahead and slow it down. You can see the Green Elves now peppering the pikemen. This is what he wants to do. You don't want to charge into them when you've got archers still available. Pepper them down. The pikes are something we don't really have a ton of answers to at this point unless we can surround them. So, if we can take care of them, take care of some of the chaff and isolate these units, that's going to be GG. Over here, however, Bridge Wards wavering, surprisingly enough, and I think you're starting to see the effects of the death of the general here. And now I can see this. I can see that they are wavering, and I wanted to get my fear-causing shield maidens in there as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, didn't set up that charge terribly, terribly well. But we are going to try and collide with the flank here and bring that that fear in. They are going to stabilize, though. Beginning to push forward here. The Mythern and Tolgalen are going to be swiftly overwhelmed by the force multiplier that is Spear Wall stance. Yeah, they're not going to have fun with that. A nice but risky charge there, although I would argue that it was worth it, given that many of those units were routing. He is going to manage to rout some of those Wardens of Nargothrond, and the presence of routing units nearby is, of course, going to spook the remaining troops we've got here. Those bridge wards being cut to pieces by the archers. Company of Prince Gwyndor happily carving their way through light infantry. Looks like maybe the light cav here is going to go for a rear charge. That would be enough to probably kill them off. Oh yeah, look at that. Down from 18 to 10. And now they'll be swiftly overwhelmed just by the sheer numbers alone. Skaldmare pushing in to the remaining Finarfin forces, and they're trying to fight back to back, but they just don't have a cohesive line anymore. And this is where routes happen. All that missile fire coming in as well. Surrounded, alone, outnumbered, and no general. The rest of these forces are going to break and flee. And that's basically it here. Bridge wards of Nargothrond. Looks like King Ammar might have maybe forgotten about them. They probably should have been brought forward to try and like counter encircle if at all possible. But that would have just exposed them to rear charges anyway. So there wasn't a whole lot that he could do. But still, moving them over a little bit quicker couldn't have hurt. Now my Friceware, my Skaldmare, less than half the company that remained to them. It's all that remains. And if you look at the percentages here, 92 to 99, a very, very close game indeed. Ammar was looking really strong for a while there, but just the numbers and the fact that we had things like Skaldmare still remaining, we were able to bring those to bear against his heavily armored front line. That's one of the things that the Green Elves didn't really have for their front line was armor-piercing units, and they just got dumpstered by Finarfin. But thankfully, we had some Skaldmare. We were able to take down Ammar's general, and I think that was probably the biggest... That's probably one of the bigger plays of the game, is managing to take Ammar's general and sap the morale of the few remaining troops. And that's going to be it there. So let's take a look at some of the kills in the after battle screen. We did really well as the Haliden, although most of those kills are going to come from things like Hishbokraz units or Howlers and things like that. So it's a little bit of an inflated score. But nonetheless, we were able to see, I think, pretty clearly how well the Haliden cavalry can perform, especially when they're working together. That's the name of the game, really, with the Haliden. Combined arms in order to overcome a lot of your weaknesses. Hitting hard, hitting fast, even though our Rigswear ambush kind of failed miserably, although one of them did quite well with about 171. One of the Ward I got 169, one of the other ones got 91. But ultimately, that ambush didn't do what it needed to do, at least what I had set out to do with it. But it did delay Toland Gauderhoth and kind of keep their forces coming in waves rather than one overwhelming force used against us all at once in tandem with Stewart of Dale's Angband reinforcements. So we were able to kind of pick them apart piecemeal, defeat them in detail. That was really significant, but look at the Waltrider Dragoons, 146, 251. The Mardrot did equally impressively, 216, 193. And the Wainriders, that's the highest I think I've ever seen the Wainriders get, with 325. Ulfedin of Ethelbrandir, I'm just taking a look at the time right now. Ulfedin of Ethelbrandir doing extremely well, 250, 187. That's really where all of my killing power was located. And we got some really nice engagements, and the Warda and the Rigswear fought a delaying action that sort of just kept bits and pieces of the Toland Gauderhoth and Angband reinforcements trickling in, and we were able to deal with those. I wouldn't say handily, because it really depleted our resources in order to do what we did, but we were able to ultimately deal with them. So that's a pretty good match. Probably one of the better matches I think that we've played, and a really good start, I think, to the Halidin's presence on YouTube. So now let me take a look here at what we've been missing. Didn't say I was commanding the total army. I did say it eventually. Wolves have Reds too. Why did I get kicked off the Reforged team? I mean, I got kicked off because Kuro got mad because he was talking shit and I talked some shit back and he got mad and kicked me out. That was pretty easy. Not really much of a story to it other than that. Overhand Spears of Gondolin are so cool. You should incorporate it into other units too. Yeah, maybe. The overhand spear animation was something that I added like specifically because I wanted Gondolin to just be really cool visually. So I don't think that's something that, for the moment at least, that I'm willing to do unless I can find another unit of like really cool, like high-end spears that would sort of like warrant that, because it does kind of mark them out as being a little bit different and being a little bit more like, I guess, well-trained than other units. I don't know. Personally, I find Cav to be a little bit tedious, but I'm still a noob. I am of a similar mind, or at least I was, but I started playing with a lot more mobility builds, and they can be extremely satisfying to play. I do have a nice 2v2 replay on the Dorloman map, which will be coming out, and it's like, again, the cavalry there was the star of the show, and they kind of turned things around. I mean, I don't know why Ryder keeps trying to hide his name. I know that it's Aqua. Hi, Aqua. I knew it was you the entire time. Just have fun, man. Pixelated Apollo, we get a heart attack pronouncing his name since he can't even manage 33 Forge names. I mean, people give him crap about it, but he's been pretty open about the fact that he has dyslexia. It's not easy to do weird names, even when you don't have that, so, yeah, whatever. Hi, Joseph. Thanks for coming to play. Let's see here. Just a lot of trolling from Aqua. Nothing really important. I guess he's bored and on winter vacation or something. Lord LOSW, and I wonder what... Yeah. I mean, that does a disservice to some of the really nice people, but there are definitely people like Aqua there. Let's see here. Do we have any questions about the actual battle? In some, you can pretty much ask for a game and someone will come. Very true. Easy enough to find games. I'm usually available. We have a lot of very active testers as well who all have the public builds. And we have a bunch of new people that came in from Pixelated Apollo, which is really cool. Happy to have them in the community. Let's see here. I wish there was more people discussing the actual game. Now that would be the fun part, wouldn't it? Let's see. Yeah, I really do appreciate Pixelated Apollo. I love like chatting and working with the guy. Like, I don't actually like work with him, but you know what I mean. Like conversing and getting the Gondolin match ready to show. He's just super freaking nice. Yeah, it was a really fun game. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on the Haliden? I'll probably leave the stream open for another, I don't know, 10-15 minutes or so before we finally close things down. Yeah, it's probably for the best there, Calvin. I don't know there, Aqua. It seems like everyone else is having a good time but you. But if you want to go play the same siege on the same map for the millionth time, go have fun, man. Do your thing. But as for you, I'm going to put you in a little bit of a timeout there. You can watch, but yeah, I've had enough of that. Apollo completely destroyed my name. To be fair, I don't even know how to pronounce her name. But yeah, do we have anybody out there who has any questions about the Haliden faction? Maybe about the new chariot that will be coming out, or about sort of the direction of the mod? Campaign questions I can answer sort of, kind of, more or less in the same capacity as I always have, but I can tell you for sure that our campaign is coming along. We do have, I think the map and like the regions map has been fairly recently completed. We also have a new lead dev who will be working on that full time once he's able to finish up with his own project shortly. But yeah, I'm an open book. So if you guys have any questions about the battle that you just witnessed, or about the Haliden faction, I'm gonna leave the stream open for just another maybe 5-6 minutes here, and I'll do my best to answer them. Easterling LC, the Easterling Legendary Company will be available in the next patch for sure. It probably won't be super difficult to put it together because we have a lot of existing pieces already that I think could be used, and you know, nonetheless give it a kind of unique look. But yeah, hopefully soon. And if people are curious about what the Easterlings will be getting for a Legendary Company, that is going to be, it's going to be a Foot Archer. Yep, because Legendary Companies are a pretty good opportunity to expand outside of like the really hard and fast rules of faction specialization in a very limited way that can help in very specific matchups so that you don't run into a situation where you've got two factions facing off and it's like been decided in the lobby already by like who's bringing what. So are the Elfiden relentless? Yes, they are relentless, and that's kind of one of the three pillars of what makes the unit as useful as it is that they are relentless, high mass, and multiple HP. Also fearless, I guess. Yep, they are for sure. And actually, if we want to just quickly exit out here, I can show you some of the other things that we've done to try and make like unit capabilities and statistics a little bit more transparent, basically. So let's go to Haliden here. And if you look at the Elfiden, you're going to see Relentless there at the bottom. It's going to give you their speed as well. It's going to tell you that they're locked morale. They have a missile resist, which is a new thing that I'm trying out to sort of like approximate the missile resistance statistic from newer games like Warhammer Total War, for example. But basically what it is a passive shield value from the front that can be gotten by you know, shooting them from the rear or whatever. It's just, I want the Elfiden to be like big kind of manly berserker guys, and you know, they take arrows to the chest and they don't even care because they're hopped up on mushrooms and meat anyway. Maybe we can make a two-hander version? I don't know, that feels pretty redundant. They already do a crap ton of damage. Like if you look, like if you actually look at other two-handed units, let's say, take the Ravagers for example, because they're both mid-tier units. It's 16-16, and the Ravagers are 13-17. So, I mean, at this point, just adding a two-handed axe to them would just be a cosmetic change. So, I don't think that's really needed. But all right, I think that's probably going to wrap it up for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed this battle. I had a ton of fun playing it. It was actually really nice to like sit down and like everyone just had fun. Everyone did like pretty damned well in this game, and so there wasn't really like a lot of like post-battle salt or anything. We all just had fun and ended up being really close. But in any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster.